The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Gentlemen, start your free agent engines. It officially starts next Wednesday, but the legal tampering period begins on Monday. Meantime, some positioning of contracts. Commanders signed a couple of defensive linemen. Von Miller said he would like to come back. That's an interesting thought. Guy did have 9 sacks last year. Josh Johnson, in an interview that he did recently, find out he almost died on the field. Wow. Just incredible story of, remember the championship game that the 49ers played against the Eagles and Brock Purdy got hurt. Josh Johnson came in, had to leave with a concussion. Oh, it was much more serious than that. And wait till you hear the story of how close he came to meeting his maker. I mean, it's really something to listen to that, and we'll get to that shortly. You may have heard now that Lou Holtz has passed away at the age of 89. He'd been in hospice for several weeks. And, I think that most people know Lou Holtz as the coach at Notre Dame. They won the national championship there after the 1988 season. He coached at a number of other places, including South Carolina, where he was replaced by Steve Spurrier, interestingly enough. And like Steve Spurrier, he was a disaster as an NFL coach and recognized that he was born to be a college coach, not an NFL coach. He had one season with the New York Jets, a 14-game season when he coached them in 1976, which wound up being Joe Namath last year in New York, and he resigned with a game to go, went back to college coaching, and eventually won that national championship at Notre Dame. But there is, and I think this may be the only place you hear this today, there is a local connection with Lou Holtz, and it's not good. It's not good at all. It has to do with, well, indirectly, Lou Holtz delivering Vinny Serrato here. Vinny Serrato, part of the Dan Snyder mess for at least half of his ownership run. And, how they came together is because of Lou Holtz. And let me explain this. If you go way back when the team went up for sale after the death of Jack Kent Cooke in 1996, his son was hoping to hang on to the team, but Jack Kent Cooke had set things up in such a bizarre way in which his fortune went to charity. I think he thought it was some type of a tax dodge or something, but it went to charity, and John Kent Cooke just didn't have the money to buy the team. And the initial ownership bid was approved by the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation. That's what it was set up as, that it would be a couple of brothers named Howard and Edward Milstein with a minority partner by the name of Daniel M. Snyder. And so they went through the steps of trying to buy the team, and the other owners around the league rejected the Milsteins. Why? Because they were being investigated for fraud. Hard to think of it this way, but all those years ago, Dan Snyder seemed to be a safe option. Paul Tagliabue liked him, liked the idea of bringing young blood into ownership. Snyder was only 34 at the time. He was local. Milsteins were from New York, so that made sense to have a local owner. And he backed him, and so did a number of the owners, and especially when he raised the value of their franchises by paying $800 million for the team and the stadium, which was a record price in those days. Now it's pocket change, but back in 99, that was a lot of money. And as it turns out, the way that Dan Snyder connected with Vinny Serrato was that the Milsteins attempted to buy the expansion Cleveland Browns. Browns left Cleveland after the 1995 season. They went to Baltimore, and by 1999, they were going to come back as an expansion team. I think what happened was what should have happened with the Colts, that the name and the logo should have stayed in Baltimore before they went to Indianapolis. So by the time the Browns were leaving years later, I think there was a great understanding of the value of logo and name and so forth. So the deal was that the name and logo stayed, and the Ravens were born as the old Cleveland Browns in 1996 in Baltimore. So the Milsteins wanted to buy the team, and their plan was to bring in Lou Holtz as the CEO. He wasn't necessarily going to coach the team, but Lou Holtz was going to put everything together for them in Cleveland. He had grown up in Ohio. He'd played linebacker at Kent State, which is just remarkable. If you ever saw Lou Holtz, he could be blown over in a stiff wind, it looked like, but somehow he got a letter playing linebacker at Kent State, which, by the way, is where Jack Lambert played college football. They're both linebackers, though it's hard to get your head around the idea that Lou was a college linebacker. Anyway, so he's got this Ohio tie, and they're going to bring in Lou Holtz. And the bag man for Holtz at Notre Dame was Vinny. Vinny was the guy who did a lot of the recruiting, and Vinny had some NFL experience. Prior to going to Notre Dame with Holtz, he had worked as a scout in the NFL with the I think it was the 49ers. He may have been with one or two other teams, but he had some NFL experience. And so this was somebody that Snyder could glom onto and at least have somebody who knew the ins and outs of how business was done in the NFL. And Vinny became his guy when the Milsteins were knocked out by other ownership, and Snyder got his partners and was able to buy the team in 1999. So Vinny Serrato comes in indirectly through Howard Milstein. And he stayed with Snyder for those first couple of years, 1999, when the cupboard had been left full by Charlie Casserly. They won the division that year. And then the 2000 season, the go for it year, the Fortune 500 Redskins, cost a fortune, finished 500. At that point, at the end of that year, Snyder was finally going to listen to people who said, you got to hire a real football guy. Hire Marty Schottenheimer. So he did for the 2001 season. Now, the funny thing about that was when Marty Schottenheimer was introduced as the coach and the president of the team, because Marty said, hey, if I'm going to run things, I got to have final say on everything, including things that we have a dispute about. Daniel, he always called him Daniel, which was sort of a condescending way I thought of addressing him. So he had final say, and that was the way things were going to be. And they asked Marty, well, what about Vinny Serrato, who has this title of Director of Player Personnel? And he says, I think I met him once. And Vinny says, oh, yeah, Marty and I are old friends. A day later, Vinny got fired by Marty. Marty goes through his season of 2001. They start 0-5. They get back in the playoff race at 5-5, ultimately finish 8-8. It was a miraculous coaching job. Should have been coach of the year that year. And at the end of the year, Dan Snyder doesn't like the fact that he doesn't have enough say in things, that Marty has final say. So he fires Schottenheimer. And who's his first hire after he fires Schottenheimer? It's Vinny Serrato, who comes back in. So love you, Lou Holtz, as a coach. Didn't agree with his politics, but I thought he was a fun guy to be around. Enjoyed watching his teams play. And thanks, but no thanks for the Vinny Serrato connection. Probably the most famous game that he ever coached, and that would include winning the national championship over Colorado. The most famous game was the Catholics versus Convicts game during the 1988 season. These were two of the top teams in the country, and they called it Catholics versus Convicts. Notre Dame, obviously, Catholic connection, and Convicts because these were the renegade Miami Hurricanes, coached by Jimmy Johnson. And the game was an absolute classic. Notre Dame went up early. Then Miami scored 3 touchdowns late. It's 21-21 at the half. And as Holtz later recalled,
so we get in the locker room, I am really mad. And I said it in a very meaningful way. I said, if I see anybody during the course of this football game do anything but class or show disrespect to Notre Dame or anything else, you represent thousands, millions of people. You're not only going to be pulled out of this game. You're never going to play for Notre Dame again. I want to see a class operation. Now, after we win the game, if Miami wants to fight, fine, we'll meet them in the alley. And I didn't plan to say this, but it just came out. And if they do, you say Jimmy Johnson's asked for me.
He had a good sense of humor. As it turned out, Notre Dame held on to win the game, 31-30, and then went on to win the national championship. Years later, conversations probably in the last couple of years, he talked to a reporter from South Bend, Tricia Sloma, who talked to him about the current state of the game and his best memories of a coaching career that produced a 249, 132, and 7 record over 33 seasons, which included stops at Minnesota, Arkansas, South Carolina, Notre Dame, and even William and Mary. This was Holtz in a conversation with Tricia Sloma.
There's something about winning that never wavered with Lou Holtz.
Then you have to learn how to win. You learn how to win because people do the little things the right way. Everybody does the big things. It's the little things.
For Lou, the little things added up to 100 wins in 11 seasons at Notre Dame and that national title in '88.
The thing about Notre Dame is you didn't worry about national championships. You wanted to be as good as you could and play as well as you could, but you had an obligation to make sure that we upheld the tradition of Notre Dame, playing hard, never giving up, playing for each other, playing with sportsmanship. All those things were important, but that all builds into a national championship.
But college football is a lot different than it was 40 years ago.
I just, it bothers me, the individualism in this game. And I think that that's not the way it should be. You play this game for your teammates. I think that what's hurt college football as much as anything is the NIL. Yeah. I don't think, I went to college. I never had any money. But you spent on what you could afford, not what you wanted. And, we never had a problem with that. And the other thing is the transfer portal. I think it's the worst thing that could happen. To allow an athlete to transfer 4 times is ridiculous. I don't know who's making those decisions, but they got to start drinking, whoever that is, because it's insane.
Not surprising from a guy who last coached in 2004. And, people can come in all different shapes and sizes. And at 5'10" and maybe 145 pounds with glasses and a lisp, he was one of the great college football coaches of all time. He left Notre Dame after the 96 season, after he'd won 100 games. He went to television, and they asked him if he'd ever coach again. First, he went to CBS, and he asked him about coaching again. He said, you can put it in granite. I've got the granite stone. And then he said, well, it really wasn't very good granite, because he did come back and coached at South Carolina, left that for good, and then worked for ESPN for 11 years. That thing he used to do with Mark May late at night, I think Reese Davis did it with him, where they would be in the courtroom, and Davis would be the judge, and the two of them would have to plead their cases about who had the best days during that day. That was really good stuff. He was very, very good on television back in the day, and had the sayings that people remember. I heard this today. I'm not sure if this is true. I should have looked this up. The famous sign where the players go down onto the field and down the steps, and the sign above the steps says "Play like a champion today." That was apparently his. He had sayings that he would rely on, such as life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. When all is said and done, more is said than done. You're never as good as anyone tells you when you win, and you're never as bad as they say when you lose. And he was also the master of this, the poor mouthing of his team. And he would say, this is the best 0-10 Navy team I've ever seen. Because the Notre Dame schedule, they play some tough games every year like Miami, but there were some built-in cupcakes along the way. Not that Navy was always a cupcake, but, Navy had some rough years, and they would have to play at South Bend, and Holtz would come up with things like that to try and get his team from having a letdown. It was all part of the theater of Lou Holtz, and, you miss characters like that. With college football. I mentioned the start of free agency in the NFL. It's going to start next Wednesday, though Monday is the unofficial legal tampering period, as they call it. So we're going to start to hear about some of these big contracts come Monday and Tuesday. And apparently the big prize this year is Malik Willis, the backup quarterback with the Green Bay Packers. We have seen this before. Matt Flynn had one game where he played for Aaron Rodgers back in the day, and I guess this was 2011. And so 2012, he gets an enormous contract from Seattle, gets beaten out by a third-round draft pick in Russell Wilson, and barely plays in Seattle and collects his money, which was big money at the time, but never really panned out. Malik Willis, much higher hope for that situation. And he is now apparently the big prize once free agency opens next week. Tony and Mike yesterday on PTI on the prospects for Willis.
Malik Willis has played in just 11 games over 2 seasons with the Packers, but Yahoo has him in line for a 2-year deal at $25 to $35 million per season. Among the teams that could have interest, the Cardinals, the Dolphins, the Steelers. Tony, if you're Malik Willis, which of those teams would you want to quarterback?
My answer would be the same if I was Malik Willis or Dontrell Willis or Willis Reed. Anybody but the Jets.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with the Jets. And then I'm now going to ask the unspoken question here. Why is Malik Willis such a big deal after 3 games last year with Green Bay? Now, let's go to the numbers.
Okay.
He had a 2-1 record.
Yeah.
He had 6 touchdown passes and no interceptions. He completed 78.7% of his passes, which is great, but it's 3 games. It's not 17, it's 3.
Who are those 3 against?
Does it suddenly vault him over Kyler Murray? Does it vault him over Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or Geno Smith? Look, here's what I think. Arizona makes the most sense because he played for Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, and Matt LaFleur's brother is now the coach at Arizona.
And the GM is the guy who was involved in his draft, the current GM in Arizona.
Cleveland always needs a quarterback. Maybe Pittsburgh needs a quarterback, Minnesota, somebody else. I'm just saying to you that in my mind right now, he is a promise. Nothing more than a promise.
But
that's all I'm saying.
Essentially, look, Tony, you're right. The sample size is small. I happen to be sitting in the stadium watching the sample size live.
He's played the Bears.
He comes in against the Bears when his boy gets knocked out, Jordan Love.
Yeah.
And he goes 9 for 11. He was fabulous. He ran it. I understand. They called safer plays. They called screens. They called rollouts, which were favorable to him. Then, damn it, find an offensive coordinator who can do that with Arizona. Because in that young Ohio State receiver, you have a stud in the making who's going into his second season.
Got hurt last year.
Got hurt last year a little bit. You got Trey McBride playing tight end, and they may draft the running back out of Notre Dame.
He's very good, low. He's very,
and if they do that, Tony, they're going to be lined up at the offensive positions. Jeremiah Love. They're going to be lined up. So why wouldn't you go there? And by the way, the pressure is less there than it is in Pittsburgh and other places.
There's no pressure because nobody cares. No. Do you know they are projecting numbers? 17-game season numbers for Malik Willis. Here are the projections over 17 games. 3,473 passing yards, 986 rushing yards, and 34 total touchdowns. If he's that good, Kansas City ought to go get him. Okay? Do they ever project how many times you get hit in the mouth and you can't actually do this?
Tony, this kid's good.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, somebody's going to give him some money. It's too much desperation for a quarterback, but sometimes less is more. The more you see of a guy, the less you really like him. We'll see. Malik Willis is not a rookie. He's been around a little bit. So, somebody will take the chance. And the way these contracts work, they have off-ramps, and you can get out of them. And everybody's waiting for the next Sam Darnold to come along. And maybe this is the next Sam Darnold. We'll see. And if they sign him for a contract, $25 million a year, that's a bargain. Darnold was getting 30-something. He's not at the top. The top is Dak Prescott at $60 million a year, but Darnold's making 33, and he outran his contract by just winning the Super Bowl. That's not to say Malik Willis will do the same thing in the next year or two, but you got to play the game to find out if you can win the game, and that's where everybody is at this point. Hey, guess who wants to come back? He's going to be 37 next season. But Von Miller had 9 sacks this past year, and if he says Washington wants him, he's coming back. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Seems to be reigning defensive lineman in Ashburn. This reported by John Keim of ESPN. Actually, Adam Schefter had it first, that they have signed defensive lineman Drake Jackson to a 1-year deal. Jackson was with San Francisco, suffered a knee injury, apparently is healthy enough to play again. Dietrich Wise, who went out in the second game of the year, I think there was the Green Bay game, with a quad injury, serious quad injury, obviously. And Shai Tuttle, who they picked up off the waiver wire at the end of the season when everybody was hurt, they've been re-signed. So that's 3 defensive linemen signed within the last 24 hours. And it leads me to think that maybe Deron Payne is not going to be back on the final year of his deal. Adam Peters was asked about an extension at the Combine last week, and he said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have him play. So my guess is, because I can't imagine there's a lot of guaranteed money left on it, they're going to see how these other defensive linemen work out, and probably, I say probably because I don't know, but I'm guessing because of this, there's some chance that Deron Payne will not be back on the final year of his deal. He signed a second year. The other interesting name that became available yesterday is Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen, former first-round pick here, had a good long run. They elected to not keep him on for the last year of his deal last year, so they released him. He goes to Minnesota, and I guess they didn't see enough there to think that he was worth hanging on to, so he's going to be available again. You bring him back. You might. I mean, he's a local guy. He liked playing here, was a good soldier, good leader. His last year, he made it back from a pec injury and played in the playoffs. Played okay, I thought. But not enough to give him the money to stay on. So that's another possibility. But that's where they are right now. They're looking at the defensive line big time because it goes hand in hand. You got to have a pass rush to have a good secondary. Secondary was terrible last year. Pass rush wasn't good enough. And that leads us to the Von Miller situation, where he was on Rich Eisen's show yesterday, and I don't think this is a surprise because he had a good year. He had 9 sacks. And he is 37 years old. He also talked to Eisen about what's next for him. He's very interested in what John Lynch has done in making the transition from Hall of Fame player to front office executive with San Francisco. He's done a really good job there with Kyle Shanahan, and Miller would like to eventually get involved in something like that. But in the meantime, he wants to play, as he told Eisen yesterday.
You're near the end? How long do you want to keep playing here?
Man, I'm definitely not at the beginning.
Nice.
But they still falling for the same tricks, Rich. They still, they still fall. I can't leave. They still falling for the stuff, man. I gotta roll the dice again. I had 9 sacks last year, and I only played 37%. So they still falling for it. They still falling for the same tricks I've been doing my whole career.
That's great.
I'm gonna keep rolling the dice until they figure it out.
Okay. So the next 2 weeks is what? You'd like to stay where you are? What's your plan on that front that you're willing to share, Vaughn?
Man, I'm a loyal guy. I would love to stay with the Washington Commanders. I fell in love with my teammates there. I love the way they run an organization. Adam Peters is great. Coach Quinn is great. I would love to be a Washington Commander. Now, if something were to happen and I'm not a Washington Commander, then I would love to go to the Denver Broncos. I think that would be. I didn't get that chance. I got traded whenever I was there. I didn't get that chance to have closure. I didn't get to walk into the stadium and be, okay, this is my last game, or I'm gonna do this with the fans on my last. I didn't get that closure. So I would love to have, closure with the Denver Broncos. And if the Commanders don't want me, the Denver Broncos don't want me, it's a team out there that's gonna pick me up that would love to have my tricks on their roster. So I just play it by ear. This is my second time around doing it. I kind of know what to expect. Just got to make the best out of whatever decision I get. I'll tell you a story about last year too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my first time being a free agent and didn't know what to expect. Free agency opens up. I wasn't one of the first guys to get called. We're waiting, me and my agent, Joby Brandon at Vanguard Sports, so just waiting around. Didn't know what to expect. Phone was not ringing. I had 2 contract offers by the end of free agency, by the end of the offseason last year. I had 1 contract from the Washington Commanders. You can only sign with 1 team.
That's right.
I had 1 contract from the Washington Commanders, and I had 1 contract for the Seattle Seahawks. So I made the decision to go to the Washington Commanders, and the other team, they went and won the Super Bowl. So these next decisions that I have to make, I have to be right on. I think last offseason, with everything that was presented, I would have made that decision 10 times out of 10. It wasn't that I didn't believe in Sam Darnold. it was just Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't that I didn't believe in JSN, but it was Terry McLaurin, and they had just played in the NFC Championship the year before. Dan Quinn, the Seattle Seahawks, they had Coach Frazier and AD at the defensive coordinator spot. They had a lot of great things going. It's just, for me, I felt like the connection that I had with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and, you know, the team that they had, and they just needed a couple more pieces to get over the hump. So I go to the Washington Commanders, and we get hit with the injury bug. And it could have went the opposite way if I would have went with, you know, the Seattle Seahawks. They could have got hit with the injury bug, and the Commanders could have went to the Super Bowl. So it's just about making great decisions, and I'm going to take my time and see whoever wants me, and I'm gonna make another great decision.
That's Von Miller. So he's telling you he pretty much chose Jaden Daniels over Sam Darnold, which would have made sense at the time. Absolutely. I mean, they went to the NFC Championship game, and one of the things they were missing was a really valuable edge rusher, which he was in a part-time role. 9 sacks, playing like 35, 40% of the snaps. That's pretty good. But, you know, he is 37. They are in a kind of a younger mode. So no commitment yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back. So there's that. And then there is, you know, you can poo-poo the culture thing when the team goes 5-12. Understand that. But this is Andrew Wiley, who elected to come back here this year, last week, or earlier this week, I guess it was, Monday or Tuesday. He had signed with the team, re-signed, and explained why he liked it here so much.
No one's really trying to run you in the ground and break you and really see what kind of man you are, necessarily. We do that in different ways, you know, and so no one's really trying to, break you down. It's all about building you up here. And just the overwhelming positivity that creates really, you know, helps with the energy in the building and the positivity and just how people view practice, lifts, certain drills at practice, and just everything. And so it's definitely a positive environment to be a part of.
Well, it's Andrew Wiley coming back here. He was a holdover. He'd been here before, before the Dan Quinn era started. So he likes it here. He's valuable in that he can play swing tackle. He can start for you. I think he's played some guard, could do that. But Wiley is back. Back to Jaden Daniels. Ben Standing had this today that, and I'd heard that this was in the works, that Jaden Daniels' mom is now officially his representative, his loan representative. Now, he's under contract through the 2027 season. So he's got 2 more years on his rookie deal, and then there's the 5th-year option. So he could conceivably play here for the next 3 years without negotiating a new contract. But reality is you work on the deal at the end of the 3rd year. So that brings you to the end of the 2026 season, and Regina Jackson is now the agent for Daniels. Previously, it was Ron Butler. And when you sign a rookie contract, the way things are slotted, there's not a hell of a lot to do. But when you get to the point of, okay, it's time for the second deal, then things get interesting. And Regina Jackson, from everything I've observed about her, she knows what she's doing. She does her research. She has gotten advanced degrees. She became officially certified as an agent 2 years ago. She's ready for this. And the only problem I would have with this, and this is not any reflection on her in any way, but the role of the agent is, and I've had agents over the years, the role of the agent is to listen to management badmouth you and go, okay, but here's what we want. Let's see if we can get to this number. And do you sit across the table, if you're Adam Peters, sit across the table from Jaden Daniels' mom, especially if he has a year, this upcoming year, like he had 2 years ago? And you go, well, he's really not that good. He's not worth the $60 million that Dak Prescott's being paid by the Cowboys. Of the top 11 deals in the NFL, all of them are quarterbacks. Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, $55 million a year. So that's the neighborhood we're going to be talking about. Maybe, you know, if he has a spectacular year, maybe you start to tickle $70 million a year. That's how insane this could get. And with the mom negotiating the deal, maybe that's an advantage for Jaden, that Peters wouldn't have the chutzpah to say anything negative about the son. I don't know. And she's not the first, to do this, but I believe the first family member to be officially certified, because we've had the Lamar Jackson situation in Baltimore, which hasn't gone that well. He has gotten a contract, and he's going to have to do another one because he's got a balloon payment of like $80 million this year. So they got to work out an extension, and his mom is his advisor. But in this particular case, this is mom going through the work, going through the paces. She's done a marvelous job, it appears, and she'll probably be good at this too. But this is not the greatest situation, I don't think, for the Commanders to be in, having to negotiate with the mom. This was a shocker the other day. The Chicago Bears, their offensive line was a big difference this year, and a big difference in the season that they had with Caleb Williams. They really protected him well. They had only 24 sacks given up as opposed to 68 the year before. They made it to one step away from the NFC Championship game. Dahlman, their center, Drew Dahlman, was durable on that line. He took every single snap, all 1,154 in 2025, started the playoff games, and he retired. 27 years old, former fourth-round pick of the Falcons, played 4 years there, started 40 games, comes to the Bears, 3 years, $42 million. You think he's at least going to play that long, or he's going to play 2, and then they'll work out the deal at the end. He just retired. And this is talking about a guy walking away at the top and walking away when he's just starting to get paid, because the rookie deal for a fourth-round pick, not a hell of a lot of money. Now, 1 year of a 3-year, $42 million deal sets you up for life if you're smart. And here's where this comes in for me. Drew Dahlman went to Stanford, right? Do we know someone else who walked away from the game much earlier than anybody wanted him to, and he went to Stanford? Oh, yes, Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck retired after 7 years and retired after a healthy year. He made a comeback from a shoulder injury, played really well. This was been 2018. And then just before the 2019 season, he decided to retire and never looked back. And Dahlman is a Stanford guy. I'm betting he made a call to Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck said, look, if you like playing football, keep playing football. But you've made some money now, and there may be some other things that you'd like to do with your life, with your Stanford degree. And I think he's got some kind of a big, economics degree or something like that, something that he could do something with. And I would not be surprised if there was a conversation between the two of them where Luck said, I'm living a pretty good life now, and I'm not even 40 years old. I'm on to my next career. I'm the general manager of Stanford football. I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying my family. I'm enjoying my life. I don't have to worry about waking up in pain every day. And maybe that registered with Dahlman, or maybe he was just ready to go. And the old Bill Parcells line is, if you start thinking about retiring, you're retired. Mike Florio yesterday with Dan Patrick on this head-scratching situation.
Here's a high-end center who just got paid last year. He's 27. He walks in and he says, I'm retiring. Do we know anything more about this?
Well, when I thought about the situation last night, and the Bears could try to seek $4 million back from him because he got a $6 million signing bonus on a 3-year deal. Technically, he hasn't earned that $4 million, and the collective bargaining agreement lets the Bears go get it if they choose to. And I thought last night, when you look at what he did on the first year of his contract, he had a career season, played every snap in the regular season, started 19 games if we include the playoffs, Pro Bowler. Was he maybe looking for an adjustment, and the Bears said no, and this is part of a broader leverage play? And I poked around a little on that. My understanding is that's not the case. He's just done. And nobody knows their body better than the players. 5 years of wear and tear. And, I say this all the time with anyone. Remember when Vontae Davis retired during a game? The moment that you're no longer willing to go out on the field and subject yourself to that physical toll, the risk that happens on every snap, the moment you're not willing to do it, then you shouldn't. And I respect it whenever a guy decides he's had enough. And by all indications, Drew Dahlman decided he'd had enough.
Vontae Davis retiring at halftime, though. That feels like a 30 for 30, Mike.
Well, it was a hell of a story when it happened. But again, the moment that you don't want to do it for whatever reason, it takes so much to go out there and subject yourself to that. And I think if you're out there and you don't want to be, you're just asking for an injury. You're asking for a bad outcome. You've got to be all in to survive, not just thrive, but survive in the NFL.
That's Mike Florio with Dan Patrick about the surprise retirement of Drew Dahlman, 27 years old, leaving the game. There could be other factors in this too. When a guy thinks about the position that he plays, Mike Webster was patient zero for CTE. Mike Webster played 18 years in the NFL. He played 16 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, retired, didn't like being retired. I think he spent a year as an assistant coach with them and came back and played 2 more years with the Kansas City Chiefs. And by the end, he died in his late 40s, early 50s. And when they examined his brain, that's when they came up with the discovery of CTE. So Dahlman may be looking at this like, if you include high school and college and then bashing heads in the pros for 5 years, that's not what I want to do. And if you don't want to do it, and if you're not stupid with the money that he's made, he hasn't made like, Aaron Rodgers kind of money. He can live very well for the rest of his life, and doesn't have to drive the most expensive car, doesn't have to have the biggest house. He can have a nice big house and a nice car and a nice life, and maybe that's what he chose. And you'd be surprised at how many players, because I remember talking to Chris Cooley about this, how many players don't love football. And maybe Dahlman reached the point where he said, I like this, I just don't love it enough. Don't love it enough to keep going. And checking out in his prime following what Andrew Luck did. Very interesting decision by a player who seemingly had worked hard to climb the mountain of the top dollar and had the top dollar for a year and then said, check, please. Check, please. All right, coming up, incredible stuff from Josh Johnson, who started the last game for the Commanders at quarterback, the well-traveled Josh Johnson. Wait till you hear this. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. When he came in as head of the Major League Baseball Players Association in 1966, the average salary in baseball was $19,000 a year. When Marvin Miller resigned in 1982, the average salary was $326,000 a year. That is the most significant hire, I think, in the history of sports. Outside of somebody coming in as a significant player like Jackie Robinson or Babe Ruth, man, the way that Marvin Miller helped to change the game was incredible. Now, certainly doing away with the reserve clause was the biggest part of it, but that was no easy punt, I should say. I said punt, right? No, that was not a punt. A punt is when you give up. A putt is when you make it. And Marvin Miller is a significant figure, not just in baseball history, but sports history. And we'll get to his hiring, which took place 60 years ago today, coming up later this hour. I don't know what the plans are for backup and third-string quarterback for Washington this year. We know that Jaden Daniels is coming back. I would assume if Marcus Mariota wants to play here again, that they will work things out, and he will come back for a third year as the backup. He's done, I think, a very good job when he's played. Team was bad this year, not for all of him. He played pretty well, but they probably would like to bring him back because of the relationship that he has with Jaden Daniels. And then for the third-string job, they keep Sam Hartman around. Hartman's a good-looking guy, no question about it, and he and Jaden are good friends. But he was horrendous in the preseason last year. I mean, he was supposed to make the team as the third-string quarterback. They wound up keeping him around on the practice squad for a year. And Josh Johnson was the third-string guy, and he had to play because Mariota couldn't start the last game against Philadelphia. And Johnson played well enough in his 18th year since coming out of college. I mean, it's an amazing story. He's been cut by everybody multiple times. He's played for 14 different teams, several of them a couple of times. I think he's been with San Francisco 3 times. He's been here twice. 2 of his 6 career starts have been with Washington. I mean, it's remarkable. Now, somebody keeps offering you a job to play football, and you can make a lot of money doing that and not get beat up. It's probably not a bad job to have, but, in a league where people get churned out, he keeps showing up. And the question is, what keeps him going as he now approaches 40? He was on the Ross Tucker podcast yesterday and he explained it.
I didn't get a scholarship coming out of high school. I went to a non-scholarship program. So you had to love the game to play at USD. Like you're paying $50,000, you're taking out loans. I had 3 jobs. Wow. So that really showed me how much I really love football and how much I sacrificed for it. And then when I got to the league, to reach a dream that, most people have that dream, but it's also not attainable because it's really hard to get to the NFL. And like when I got there and to be cut and be, fall short so many different times, but still wanting to get up every day to try to pursue it, that's just me respecting who I am. Like I love the game of football, and it didn't really matter to me that it's week 18 and we going 13-3 and we got a bye coming up. I mean, week 14-3 now. We had a new game. My bad. Or if it's we just playing just to play. Like to me, I love the game. I respect the game too much to not be grateful for those moments. And that moment can be big for me, but also could be big for one of my teammates. A guy that's a rookie, and if they go out there and make the right play, they can change the trajectory of their career. So for me, it's to be an example. It's to be a standard that no matter what the situation is, you go out here and you do your job and you do it at the highest level.
How much did it mean to win that game?
Oh, it was awesome, man. Especially versus the Eagles. Because the Niners situation happened. The Eagles, they've been getting the best of whatever teams I've been on lately. And so for us to go out there in that fashion, to come back, when we had some turnovers, we had some things not going our way, and everybody was ready to give up on the situation, for us to figure that out and pull that victory out, I think it was great for our organization. It was great for DQ, great for our staff, and I was excited to be a part of it.
I don't know if you went back and watched any of it or not.
I have.
But you and I kind of went viral because the play where you ran in for the touchdown and Keely Ringo for the Eagles ran away from you. I'm not laughing. I do the Eagles preseason game, so I'm not laughing. But Kevin Harlan's calling the play, and I see him, and I you're not supposed to, as a color analyst, you're not supposed to talk while the play-by-play guy's talking. So I said, "Oh my goodness," because I saw Keely run the other way, away from you. Can you just take me through that play from your perspective and like what you saw?
Okay, so it's ironic, right? I love the call. First off, when Cliff called it, I said, "Oh, this touchdown," because they crashing the edges, and so and Trey was supposed to run a route. Most people don't know that. So Trey actually blocked longer because he felt he was like the way the corner's playing it. Because I was like, "Bro, why you didn't run the route?" He was like, "The way the corner was playing it, bro, I knew you was gonna get the edge." So I said, "All right." And so what happened? I didn't see it the way that y'all called it, because when Keely came to me, I was like, "I'm about to throw the cross route to Chris Moore." Like that's why I went up the pass. I was literally gonna drift from him because Chris Moore was coming full speed.
So you thought Keely was gonna come attack you,
yes,
and you were gonna lob it
I
over.
was about to throw the same touchdown I threw to John Bates.
Got it.
I was literally, when I saw Keely's eyes, I was like, "All right, buy some time. He finna run to you. Chris gonna be in the back of the end zone, touchdown, and we going to take the lead." And so when I went to pump it, he turned. I was like, "Oh, cool. Let's get to the end zone. And then we about to walk through this thing." And then when he did it, like the internet was killing him, but I felt like in a football move, I was like, I didn't see it as bad. I felt like he was thinking what I was thinking. Like I literally felt like he was thinking what I was thinking. He saw.
Oh, so that's interesting.
He felt Chris coming. I knew Chris was gonna be there. Trey was supposed to run like a corner route. Trey didn't run the route, which would have took Keely out of there as well.
Right.
But when Keely did what he did, I said, "Oh, Chris Moore back in the end zone, touchdown." This is the same thing we just did to John Bates. And then but that's the game. That's the game of football. He turned, and I was like, "Oh, the next move." It's all reactions.
And not bad for an Holt Cocker to run in the end zone like that. Now, here's the part of the conversation which got some headlines, and also I think it addresses how lacking the NFL is with its concussion policy, with its, like, they have this independent observer who's supposed to flag it when a player looks like something's not right. So let's go back to when this happened. This was after the 2023 season, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles playing at San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. Brock Purdy was the starting quarterback for San Francisco. It was the end of his rookie year. It's a miraculous story. Mr. Irrelevant, last player picked. Eventually, it flows to him as the starting quarterback, and he gets them to the NFC Championship game. Talk about Cinderella stories. Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant, could have, at the end of his rookie year, won the Super Bowl. And, game starts out, and he goes back to throw a pass. Looks like fairly routine. Pass gets knocked down as his arm was hit. As it turned out, he tore a ligament in his elbow. So Josh Johnson comes in the game. Josh Johnson only lasted a couple of series and had to leave with a concussion, forcing Brock Purdy to come back in the game, and they knew he couldn't throw. It was impossible to throw a pass. They were going to try and win the game just running the football. They couldn't do it. I mean, they were even talking about playing Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he may have even taken a couple of snaps. I mean, it was just an incredible disappointment. And in some respects, you might say, well, if you got a concussion, maybe you could try and play through it. Well, it turns out that he did. And the fact that nobody in the NFL, all this safety stuff that they've got, these observers who're supposed to see if something's wrong, nobody saw this until the second concussion when he finally had to go out, that there were actually 2 concussions in this game. And there have been tragedies like this in high school, where a kid has an undiagnosed concussion, goes out and plays and gets hurt again and dies. And Josh Johnson, listen to this, came I don't want to say, right next to dying, close to dying, but this was a possibility. So, and the rules changed in the NFL off of that game, because now you have the emergency quarterback who doesn't count as part of your active roster. He's supposed to only be able to address 47. This would be 48, I guess. So this is Johnson explaining what happened in that NFC Championship game and how it almost cost him his life.
Most people don't know that I was double concussed in that game. If you ever have the time and you really want to go back, you're gonna notice the first sack I had was with a play action pass, and Hassan Reddick came off the edge and he hit me, and my head hit the ground. I actually lost the ball on that play, and that was the start of really the decline of what was about to be that day. I ended up with a brain bleed. I ended up.
Wait, hold on a second. So you get a concussion.
I had double concussion.
No, but you got a concussion on that play.
Yeah.
And then you stay in.
Stay in.
You didn't know you had a concussion?
I never had a concussion before, so I didn't really know the symptoms.
So you went from 0 concussions in your life to 2 in one game.
2 in 1 in the NFC Championship, the biggest game of my life.
So you're staying in there. You stay in there, and then you got rocked by somebody.
Sue knocked me out the game.
Okay, and then. How did you know you had a second concussion? And what happened after that?
I never knew I was concussed. So the whole time I'm in the game, I just felt really weird. I never felt like I was present. And I didn't understand why. And I was fighting myself. It was a lot of inner battle, because when I found out the side of my brain that I messed up, it was the processing side. It wasn't the memory side. I didn't even know our brains work like that, honestly. I learned so much about it. And all I knew was every time I wanted to react, I couldn't react the way I wanted to, and it didn't feel right. So I just said, all right, I'm just going to pick a read and just throw it and just rip it, and whatever happens, happens. And so when Sue knocked me out the second time, the ref told me, like, hey, you got up stumbling. And I'm like, I didn't get up stumbling. He like, Josh, you almost fell over. I don't remember that happening. And so I'm looking at it like an Oakland kid who grew up a Niner fan. I'm in the NFC Championship. I'm trying to win this game, go to the Super Bowl. This is a dream come true. But then when I went in the blue tent, they was taking me through the test, and I didn't pass. And they was like, all right, Josh, you got to go in the locker room. And when I got to the locker room, I sat down on the training table, and I got up and I almost threw up. And that's when I knew, all right, you really, it's something.
So then what happened after that in the offseason?
The offseason was
you said brain bleed?
I had a brain bleed. So if we got time, I'll take you through the whole what happened. So we flew back to Philly, one of the worst flights of my life. I never felt I never felt as uncomfortable as I felt on that plane ride. Got back to San Fran, went home, did exit meetings the next day. I was in shades like this, and everything was just hard to be in light. Then 2 days later, I almost passed out in the shower, and my wife called the team, and she was like, something's not right. And so when I got my MRI, that's when they figured out I had a brain bleed, because everybody thought I had a concussion. So I had a brain bleed, and the bleeding got into my spine to the point where I couldn't touch my toes. So I felt like three days ago, I felt like one of the better athletes in the world, and then 3 days later, I can't even touch my toes. And so went through rehab with the team doing that. Also was doing a double rehab with Sergio Azzolino, who has an office in San Fran. Great guy if you ever need brain health recovery. And so I'm doing 2 basically rehabs a day. And they thought my career would be over. By God's grace, I healed in 3 months. Instead of 6, like they had projected. Healed in 3 months. The Ravens signed me. I switched my helmet. I started taking jiu-jitsu to learn how to fall a little different. And then we're here.
How about that? 2 concussions in the game. That nobody picked up on anything until the second one when he had trouble getting up. And turns out, and they don't find this out because the game is Sunday. He gets back. It's a couple of days before he's really noticing that things are a problem. Wife calls the team. They do another MRI. Oh, my God, bleeding on the brain. You can die from that. And he'd been bleeding on the brain for like a few days, right? So, that's really a remarkable story. And thank God everything turned out okay. But it's for all they do in the league and all they talk about with the safety, it's a brutal game. It just is. It's an insanely brutal game. And Josh Johnson was in a position, had he stayed healthy in that game, I don't think they would have won. He's a third-string guy and has been bounced from team to team for a reason, but they would have at least had a chance to do it. And they had no chance to do it because they didn't have a quarterback who could throw the ball. They did not have anybody who legitimately could throw a football with Josh Johnson getting knocked out. More importantly, that he's got 2 concussions in the game and bleeding on the brain. And wouldn't that have been, thank God, but wouldn't that have been something if you find out a couple of days later, oh, my God, this went undiagnosed and he died. And, God, thank God everything is fine. But, you just wonder with the league always pushing that narrative. Oh, we're making the game safer. We're making the game safer. And then you have what is in this, something that is crazy. I wonder, too, about the guys who were in the huddle. Did any of them say, hey, Doc, you might want to bring Josh over to the sidelines here and take a look. He just doesn't seem right in the huddle. Or are they just so focused on what they're trying to do that they don't even worry about that? This is the game to get you to the Super Bowl. Crazy story. And this interview didn't just take place because I watched the video of it. This is Tucker interviewing him at the Super Bowl. So for whatever reason, Josh Johnson, well, he would have been around anyway because he lives in the Bay Area. He's from the Bay Area. But still, I mean, to have held it for as long as they did, the Super Bowl's been over for 2 weeks now, and this surfaces, man, that is that's wild. Coming up. It was exactly 60 years ago today that the Major League Baseball Players Association, with probably nothing more than a footnote in the newspapers, made a hire which has turned out to be, I believe, one of the most, if not the most significant labor hire in the history of sports. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I've spent some time today on what a dumpster fire Maryland basketball is this year. If they lose on Sunday to Illinois, and Illinois I think is ranked 10th in the country, Maryland's combined record this season, this football season, and this basketball season in the conference would be 5-24. 1 conference win in football and 4 in basketball. And, you got to give Buzz Williams another year for sure. I mean, that's definitely going to happen. But look across the river. The Georgetown situation is, they're not supposed to be this bad. This is year 3 for Ed Cooley. And guy gives a great press conference. He really does. But the frustration, you've seen it this year. He threw a water bottle at a game and hit a kid in the stands. I think it was a family member of one of the players. He got suspended for that. And the team is terrible. They're just bad. And they're probably going to make an early exit from the Big East tournament. And now you got year 4, and you go, well, what's going to happen? In the meantime, the guy who replaced Cooley at Providence, and Cooley's a Providence lifer, grew up in Providence, coached Providence for a long time, did a good job, is a good coach. Hasn't worked out so far at Georgetown, but his replacement appears to be on his way out. That's Kim English, And English came to Providence from George Mason. So it wasn't Georgetown, but it was nearby George Mason. He leaves there, goes to Providence, and his now 3-year record is 20-36. And according to sources, he was told about a week ago that he won't be back next year. I don't know how long his contract is. Maybe it's 4 years, maybe 5. Who knows? But they're getting out of the Kim English business. And, one of the things that Cooley said when he took the Georgetown job is he loved Providence. He loved the people there. But his daughter had gone to Georgetown and wanted to stay in the D.C. area. So this was something that was very attractive for him, that he could, be near his family and coach at Georgetown, which had this great tradition going back to the John Thompson days. And he, like many African-American coaches that age, grew up idolizing John Thompson and wanted to rebuild the program. Hadn't happened so far. Hasn't happened. And Kim English, his replacement, didn't get it done. So if Cooley's going to be out, where would be the likely landing place? Could happen. It's happened before. You could see that happening, that he'd go back to Providence and coach there, and I think they'd welcome him back. But I like the guy. I like his news conferences. I like the way he articulates what he does and how he works with the players. But fact of the matter is, they haven't won. I've said this a long time. I don't know what you do about it with the arena, because you can't build one on campus. The access doesn't work in and out. But when you play at Capital One Arena, which is even bigger than the Xfinity Center for Maryland, and they're not putting many people in the stands this year, it's just a tough environment to get people fired up about. If you're sitting in the stands for a Big East game and there's 6,000 people there in an arena that seats 20,000, 14,000 empty seats, that's tough. That's tough to overcome. So keep an eye on both situations, as the Providence job is apparently going to open up again. And the Georgetown job, while it's filled with Cooley and he probably will be back next year, it's not a guaranteed thing. I think they've won 8 or 9 games, 8 or 9 conference games, something like that. They're not good this year. Marvin Miller was hired exactly 60 years ago today by the Major League Baseball Players Association. And to give you an idea of how primitive things were at that time, they didn't have a collective bargaining agreement. There's no such thing. Marvin Miller negotiated the first one 2 years later in 1968. That covered the 68 and 69 seasons, and it won the players an enormous raise, 43% increase in the minimum salary. The minimum salary, and I don't think that this was, I'm trying to think about my dad at the time. He might have been making that, and we lived okay. We were fine, but the minimum salary in Major League Baseball in 1966 was $7,000 a year. He got it up to $10,000 a year. But they didn't have what they have now. This is free agency. And so this is what Marvin Miller says, and this is an interview that he did a number of years ago. He's passed away. He was 95 when he died, and served as head of the Players Association until 82. So he was overseeing 3 strikes and really changed the game significantly. While he was head of the Players Association, he'd come from the United Steelworkers Union, where he had worked his way up to be the leading economist and negotiator. I mean, he was doing some big time, tough negotiating. So he was the man for the part. Got the job in 1966, and later explained in an interview how he overcame what he was faced with when he came in 60 years ago.
When I started, money was not the issue. I felt that the players were easily the most exploited group I had ever seen, because I measure exploitation in an economic sense. I'm an economist by background, and the difference between the value of their services and what they were actually getting was so tremendous that I felt they were the most exploited group I had ever met. But there was none of that feeling among the players. They did not feel underpaid. The issues were far different than that. They were concerned, at the time I first met them, they were concerned about a tax on their pension plan by the owners. And they were also concerned, without articulating it, they were concerned that the reserve rule system really left them without dignity in the workplace. And I know that everybody now talks about money and how much the salaries have increased, and I understand that. But it is so important to understand that back then, players were not dealing with the issue of money. Mickey Mantle, who was an active player when I came in, who has written another book recently, has spoken frankly about it. He said people now ask him, about his salary as compared with salaries of present players and so on. And he always has a very classy answer. People goad him. They want him to say that present players make too much. And Mickey and Joe DiMaggio both give classy answers. They say, present players don't make too much, we made too little. But Mantle in his book says very frankly, I never considered myself underpaid at the time. And the reason, of course, is that he had not the faintest idea of what the value of his services was worth. And the matter of the reserve rules, and for your listeners who may not really understand that whole restrictive system, typically a player entered baseball, professional baseball, by being drafted by one organization, usually right out of high school at a tender age of 17 or 18, and told that he can deal only with one organization. And he either takes whatever terms they offer, or he cannot play professional baseball anywhere in the world. Now, American employees, young or old or middle-aged, wouldn't accept that system for 10 minutes. But that was what was in effect for 80 and 90 years. And the young player, faced with that kind of lack of options, signed a professional contract. And from that point on, he was the property of that organization. Unless they decided to sell him for cash, literally, or unless they decided to sell him for other players, a so-called trade, or unless they decided that he could no longer play baseball at the major league level and released him. But the player had no options at all. Now, it's obvious what that does to a salary structure. There's no bargaining ability, no bargaining power at all. When an owner can tell a player, whether his name is John Smith or Joe DiMaggio, you'll take what I offer, or you can go pick cotton, because you cannot use your skills anywhere in the world to play baseball. Well, that system does more than exploit a player money-wise, because when you're owned like that, when you're a piece of property like that, there can be no essential dignity in the workplace. It is just out of the question. And it was perhaps the manifestation of that and what it meant that began to bother the players far more than money.
That's Marvin Miller on how he launched a new era in professional sports on this day in 1966. Now, it took some time. Curt Flood, who had been traded after the 1969 season from the Cardinals to the Phillies and decided he didn't want to go, decided that he would take on the reserve clause. That because they didn't have contracts. Remember, there were not multi-year deals then. You negotiated year to year, and you couldn't go anywhere because of the reserve clause. The team could hang on to you. So Flood said, well, I don't want to go to Philadelphia. I want to be able to play where I want to play. Cardinals apparently don't want me anymore, but there are other teams I can go play for. I want to choose. And system in place didn't allow that, and he went to Marvin Miller and said he wanted to do this, and Miller said, well, this is likely going to end your career. Are you ready to do this? He was. And he took on the reserve clause. It made it to the Supreme Court. Now, in the meantime, he did come back and play. The Cardinals, I guess, and the Phillies, they forfeited his rights because he didn't play in the 1970 season. And he signed with the Washington Senators, but he only played about 20 games. I actually saw him play in a game at RFK Stadium, and then he disappeared. He'd had some alcohol problems at that point and other issues related to challenging the reserve clause. And they lost in the Supreme Court. It went all the way, and the courts ruled, no, you can still be considered an indentured servant, as Miller put it. But in 1974, Dave McNally and Andy Messerschmidt, they were in the last year of their contracts, and Miller said, do not sign an extension. He said, we believe that we can take this to court. And sure enough, it went to an arbitrator, and the arbitrator ruled that they had the right to free agency. And McNally wound up retiring. He'd played with the Orioles a long time. He didn't play, but Andy Messersmith became baseball's first free agent as he signed with the Atlanta Braves. And so what Miller oversaw was an incredible transformation of baseball because finally doing away with the reserve clause made that much of a difference. Now, they had to fight along the way. They had a strike in 72. They had a strike in 76. And then in 1981, they knocked out half the season with a strike. So he had to put them through labor pain, but they always won. He managed to keep the players together. That was the great leadership of Marvin Miller. And the transformation of baseball money and then eventually trickling down to all sports, but it took time. Remember, the NFL did not have free agency until 1993. It was like 15 years after baseball. The NBA, a similar period of time. Sometime in the 80s, they got free agency. But the average salary when Marvin Miller walked in the door in 1966, average salary, which included like Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays making over $100,000 a year, the average salary was $19,000 a year. When he left, the average salary was $326,000. And I'll bet you the average salary now is tickling $3 million if it's not at $3 million with the Shohei Ohtani deals and Soto and so forth. And Marvin Miller was that guy. He was the guy who came in and said to the players, hey, you're the most exploited labor group I've ever seen here. And I have represented the steelworkers. I represented people who had health problems based on their daily job. I was able to negotiate for them, and he was able to negotiate for the baseball players. And I think he did eventually get in the Hall of Fame. I think he may be there, maybe not. I don't know. But there's pushback, obviously, from the owners who did not like the idea that they had lost this incredible leverage that they had over the players. But as you could hear, Marvin Miller was a very soft-spoken guy. He was a guy that got their attention, and he got their trust, and they believed in him. And I remember covering the lockout in 1990. This was when Don Fear was running the Players Association, where Miller had been retired for 8 years, when there appeared to be cracks in the foundation, when it looked like the players were finally going to give in on what the owners wanted. And there was an owner from a small market team in Milwaukee named Alan Bud Selig, who was walking around talking to every open microphone. We need to have a salary cap. We have to have a salary cap. And the players were close to caving on that. And that's when Don Fear called in Marvin Miller. He brought Reggie Jackson with him. And the two of them sat the players down and said, you guys need to understand the battle that we went through to get you to this point. So just sit tight and you're going to win. And sure enough, they won. The owners didn't like that. They forced Fay Vincent out. Bud Selig became commissioner, and the rest is history. But a titanic change in major sports on this day in 1966 with Marvin Miller becoming president of the Baseball Players Association. That'll do it for me. I'm back here tomorrow. Well, it's Friday already. Back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. See you then.